Hello everyone and welcome back to another Kerbal Space Program video in which I'm going to build the thing being built on screen right now. It's a single staged orbit spaceplane. I've never made one of these things before, so this should be fun. Now I do apologise that this seems to be a recurring thing as of late, but I once again found myself with rather limited time for video creation this week. The joys of not having YouTube as my full-time job, I guess. So I decided I had to go for kind of a nice easy mission for today's video because I had a limited time to make it. Something that ended up not being really quite that easy though, and this nearly caused me to rip my hair out in frustration. But we'll get to that part when we get to that part. This is a build that was actually inspired by a Reddit post on the Kerbal Space Program subreddit by the user Snackless Kerbal, who posted this really sleek, fully stock spaceplane design, and I really liked how they achieved this really cool aesthetic by clipping the Mark 1 and Mark 2 size pieces together. And so I decided to make my own take on this while keeping a similar design to Snackless Kerbal's. I wanted to integrate a couple of nuclear engines and higher crew and fuel capacity to extend the original SSTO's range from low Kerbin orbit all the way to being able to land on the surface of the Mun. I set my sights on the Mun for two reasons. Firstly, because it's just a fun challenge, right? But also because I've been looking for an excuse to test the runway and attached space center that I built in one of the Mun's craters a few weeks ago using the mod Kerbal Konstructs. So we're going to fly this SSTO along with a crew of 9 Kerbals to the Mun, land at my Kerbal Konstructs Mun colony, specifically at its runway site, and then launch back into space using the runway, ultimately returning back home safely to the Kerbal Space Center. Now, I really don't think my SSTO looks anywhere close as being as good as Snackless Kerbal's. One thing I've never really been great at in this game is aesthetic part clipping and building custom fuselages with fairings. Snackless Kerbal appeared to build custom wing-mounted engine bodies from fairings, but for the life of me, I just couldn't seem to imitate them very well, and with the way symmetry works in KSP, each fairing has to be built separately, so trying to make them aesthetically identical was quite a challenge. So I clearly have a long ways to go when it comes to, custom engine housing like this, but it is a start at least. And what isn't starting is the construction of this spaceplane. In fact, you could even say it's finishing because it's done, right? I like how my like and subscribe thing came up at such a weak moment in the video. But yeah, I thought I'd just adorn the spaceplane with a few flag pieces, because these kind of sort of more simple builds, I like to add a bit more kind of things that make it look a little bit more realistic. So some warning signs about the nuclear nature of two of its engines. We've got lots of radiation symbols, and we've got my Lowne Aerospace worm logo, and indeed my normal Lowne Aerospace logo design, along with the Union flag, because that's where Lowne Aerospace is based. That's where I live in the United Kingdom, right? So yeah, anyway, as you can see, we have crossfaded away from the spaceplane hangar to a beautiful cloudy day on Kerbin as we get ready to launch the SSTO. There it is, coming into view. And again, this space center was enhanced by the mod Kerbal Konstructs, which is again the mod I used to construct the Mun Base that we're about to go and visit. So let's go ahead and light those engines. The novelty of igniting the Rapier engines with the mod Waterfall that obviously enhances the sound and light, engine effect, the novelty's still not really worn off of me at this point. I feel like it's still a mod I only recently installed, and thinking about it, I've probably had it for years. Well, I definitely have had it for years at this point. So yeah, either way, igniting the Rapier engines with this mod, still absolute chef's kiss. And there we are, we have pitched up off the runway, somewhat facilitated by the fact I had to reduce the spring and damper strength of the rear landing gear and increase the strength of the front landing gear so that kind of the plane would more naturally be able to sort of pitch up, I guess. And there we are, we're now in flight, and so we can, I used this little flight phase indicator thing on the last SSTO video I did, I think, or the one before, I don't know, I can't quite remember, but people seem to appreciate it, so I thought I'd showcase it again, just showing kind of basically what phase of the flight we're in, because generally there are sound cues when things change, for example when I light the nuclear engine and stuff, but it's not always obvious because you can hear me yapping over the sound of the game, and the little UI on the left that shows which engines are active is quite small. So there you are, we've accelerated to 440 meters per second. That's a key phase because, of course, the Rapier engines do not provide maximal thrust until they're passed around that sort of speed. Then we're going to ascend to 10 kilometers before we start flying a little flatter. And the next phase will be maximizing speed. Then we'll activate the nuclear engine, switch the Rapiers to the less efficient but more powerful closed cycle mode that does not require the oxygen that is no longer there when we're that high up in the atmosphere, and then shut down the Rapiers, then shut down the nuclear engines. They'll be in orbit. So there we are. That's just spoiled. I've spoiled the entire video, so apologies for that. But yeah, Joe, another thing that I haven't got over the novelty of are those beautiful stock volumetric clouds. So they could, I think, I can't even remember if I've downloaded the latest version at this point. I think I have, but I have to double check now. But I think we're on version 5 of the volumetric clouds one at this point. And obviously, for those following the development of Kitten Space Agency, BlackRack, who is the creator of the volumetric clouds mod, is working hard on Kitten Space Agency. And Kitten Space Agency looks absolutely amazing. I'm really excited to continue following the development of that game. I haven't made that many videos on it though. I feel like other channels, like, I don't know, Shadow Zone makes quite a lot of update videos for Kitten Space Agency. I feel like I'm not really going to be adding much more to the community by making carbon copies of those videos. Not carbon copies, but you know what I mean. I feel like we've already got enough channels covering, you know, the Kitten Space Agency development that I don't feel really compelled to make too many videos of it. Kind of learned this lesson the hard way when I tried making, you know, Starship update videos. I actually ended those last year because I think the community was already quite well served by, you know, Marcus House, What About It, NASA Spaceflight. People were really watching my videos, which I get it, you know, so that's kind of why I stopped doing those. So yeah, just sort of focusing on Kerbal Space Program for a bit. I might try and get back into Planet Coaster 2 at some point. Planet Coaster 2, I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with. Like, there were just so many things I really wanted them to fix with the first game that they didn't. Like the enormous station footprints. I was convinced they were going to fix that because everyone hated the default station blueprint. You know, the footprint of the station. It was so big, and it's exactly the same. And there's just so many things missing. Like, I mean, they keep adding updates that like fix aspects of the game. Like, to my knowledge, you still can't delete the curbs from the paths. They've only just added the ability to do like right angle paths. I think it's just like, come on, guys. This was like in the first game from like, I don't know if it was day one, but it was very early. And like, there's no cars. We can't build like parking lots, which is like a bit of a missed opportunity. Like, just import the assets from Planet Coaster 1 into Planet... You have them. Like, graphically, the game hasn't really changed that much. The main change has been lighting, which is enormous and cannot be understated. It's really hard to look at gameplay of Planet Coaster 1 now because of how good Planet Coaster 2 looks. But, yeah, when they add cars, I think I will probably give the game another go. Apologies, by the way. I feel like I'm talking about a subject that very few people watching this video probably care about, but just... People sometimes keep asking me about, you know, Planet Coaster and all. I'm just laying it down what my stance is with Planet Coaster at this moment in time, you know, February of 2026. Year of the Horse, I think, right? Chinese New Year? I'm not going to pause the video and fact check myself. Anyway, we have entered a stable, low Kerbin orbit. So now we're going to form a rather expensive burn that's going to get us to the Mun. Now look carefully at kind of the nav ball interface at the bottom of the screen. You can see I've got auto SAS set to hold the kind of blue maneuver node marker, but as you can see, the plane wants to continue pitching up. Because of the fact that we have that kind of funky part clipping, I guess the nuclear engines are not firing directly into our center of mass, which means that the plane constantly wants to veer off course a little bit. Not massively to the point where it's very impossible to control, but just enough where it's very annoying, especially when it comes to landing on the Mun. So I mentioned at the beginning of this video that, hey, I've got much time this week, so I'll do an easier topic. You know, I'm sorry, guys, I lied. I have made SSTO space planes before. And I'm like, this is a topic I'm quite comfortable with. I'm quite comfortable building SSTO space planes at this point, so let's just do an SSTO space plane that visits our Mun base, because I do genuinely want to test out the runway, see if it does actually work as I hoped and dreamed it would. And you'll find out if it did later on, but obviously it comes back to landing on the Mun with this thing was really, really challenging because it's quite a heavy craft, right? It's got high crew capacity of 2.9, I think it was, wasn't it? Yeah. So, you know, high crew capacity, high dry mass. We've only got 2 nuclear engines, and the Mun's surface gravity is quite low relative to the entire Kerbal system, but landing on the Mun with just 2 nuclear engines carrying quite a heavy lander, I know it's like a plane, but let's just call it a lander, it's quite challenging. Not usually an issue, but two things make this complicated. We're trying to land at a very specific point on the Mun. I didn't want to have to like land somewhat near the Mun base and just roll towards it. That would have been like a bit dumb. I wanted to land at the spaceport of the Mun base, like by its runway. So I wanted to do that, land properly. And crucially, it's not really the thrust rate ratio that was the issue. It was the fact that firing along, like trying to maintain a stable burn was very difficult because the plane constantly wants to pitch up. So when it comes to like pointing retrograde or pointing along a specific vector on the nav ball to kill off, either our vertical speed or horizontal speed, or trying to strike a balance between the two, it was very difficult, especially when it came to doing the final touchdown. The plane constantly wanted to backflip. It was a nightmare. So I hope it's easy enough to follow along with the descent just here. But there are quite a number of stealth quick loads here. I'm counting on my timeline. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6. This is really small thumbnail. 5 or 6 stealth quick loads that you'll see where I had to I made a quick save and then continued with the landing and fudged it up. So then I had to reload a quick save and then made another one. So yeah, it was kind of a nightmare, to be honest. I was getting really worried that this wasn't going to work. I didn't do myself any favors, mind, by not adding any. I thought I could have sworn I added some large reaction wheels. Well, not large reaction wheels, but the mid-size reaction wheels, the Mark 1 size reaction wheels. I thought I added a couple of them in those wing-mounted engine bays. But I guess I didn't, because this thing, well, it turns about as fast as a merry-go-round. And like I say, it was really hard to control. The ship would constantly want to veer up. But subtly enough, it would want to veer up subtly enough where I feel like a good amount of reaction wheels could have counterbalanced that. I'm not quite sure. So I would say fly this at your own risk if you want to follow along with the time-lapse at the beginning to build your own, or if you're a channel member or Patreon supporter, you of course have your own ad-free version of this video with a craft file download link in the video description. And here we are, touching down. So just before we slam into the ground, we're going to activate RCS. We've got those Werner engines on the front just to slow down the belly flop somewhat. And yeah, okay, we've not landed on the runway or any of those like kind of Falcon 9 style landing pads, but you know what? You guys didn't see how many failed attempts there were. This one I was just happy that we'd managed to land. And we're just going to now taxi to the runway. Now, one of the issues was it was so difficult to land this thing. I had to do quite an inefficient landing to counteract the fact that we kept on. It was really slow and unresponsive, and it would constantly want to veer off course. So we've actually not got enough fuel to get back to Kerbin. Normally that would be an issue, right? But it's not an issue here, because we are on a Mun base, and we've got landing pads, and we've got a vehicle assembly building, and there are fuel tanks. You can't see any right now, but there are fuel storage tanks on the surface. So we can send our refueling rover out of, I don't know, the vehicle storage area or something, and go and refuel the space plane. There's just one problem. The refueling rover doesn't exist. So we need to go ahead and just quickly do that. So now we're on the Mun base. Ooh, vehicle assembly building. This isn't like a bamboozle. You can ignore the view. That's a simulated view. It's just to simulate Kerbin. That's like a TV screen when we look out the space plane hangar door. So just ignore that. But yeah, with Kerbal Konstructs, we can launch this thing directly from our Mun base. It's got a launch pad and everything. There'll be a link in the description to the video where I built the Mun base. But wait for it. There we are. I kind of cut across the whole boring sequence of launching, and there we are. We're going to now just drive over to our space plane, and we can refuel. Now, one thing I want to address, the elephant in the room maybe, that some people might have cottoned on to, is you're thinking, hang on, Matt, there's one fatal flaw with this space plane, or at least there is another flaw with this space plane in addition to the flaws I've already highlighted in this video thus far, and that is there's no way that the Kerbals on board can go on EVA, because there's only 2 modules there that have EVA hatches, right? It's the Mark II, command crew cabin, I should say, and the Mark I command pod, both of which have their hatches completely occluded due to the part clipping. So how on earth can Kerbals go on EVA? And I would say, well, some of you now might be thinking, well, it's okay, because Matt has this docking port here. They can transfer through the docking port, through that piston onto this rover. But come on, guys. They can't. They realistically aren't going to be able to transfer through that hydraulic piston, are they? But with the power of the mod Free IVA, we can use that inline docking port as a means of disembarking the vessel, even though ordinarily we wouldn't be able to use it because it has no crew storage. We can't transfer crew to be on board that part. But using the mod FreeIVA, we can just physically, manually walk them into that part, and then we can EVA from there. So just addressing that before we get there, but you'll see that in a second. Here you can see we're just very, very clumsily fumbling with this kind of array of hinges and the piston and the docking port, trying to get these two vehicles to attach. I know we could have used the claw, but again, I just talked about realism. Having a Kerbal transfer piston isn't that realistic. I feel like fuel transferring through the claw through like a random bit of this spaceplane's fuselage, it's not really that realistic, right? I feel like there would be the means of transferring fuel built into the docking ports, though, so there we are. And as you can see, the fuel hath been transferred. We're only going from the surface of the Mun to the surface of Kerbin, so we don't need to fully refuel the spaceplane. So that's why, I'm not completely filling it back to completely full. But yeah, now we can undock the refueling rover. I guess we could. I guess we should probably recover it actually, because I can see we've got Valentina Kerman on board, and she's one of like the big main 4 Kerbals. I don't really like leaving them stranded. Oh, I probably shouldn't use the word stranded, right? But occupying bases that aren't at the Kerbal Space Center, right? I like having the main 4 Kerbals starring in my videos whenever they can. Usually when I'm doing big interplanetary missions, I just have 3 seats. So Valentina Kerman, unfortunately, doesn't always get automatically added to my crew rosters. I still like having her around whenever I can. So yeah, we'll probably need to recover this vessel, or I'll do some mining off screen, right, and just do a recovery mission. But I don't want to film that for you guys because like it'll be the same video as this one basically. I mean, what I could have done actually was transfer a Kerbal off this space plane and then swap them out with Valentina. But I guess, well, life is full of learning experiences, isn't it? So now we have got Lisley Kerman, I believe. She has recovered from her Krakenitis. For those that remember, yeah. She's recovered from her acute case of Krakenitis. Werner von Köln was able to synthesize medicine using the mint ice cream we recovered from the surface of Minmus a couple of weeks ago. So Lizzie Kerman is now fully mended. This is her first mission back, and she's going to go ahead and plant our Lowne aerospace flag, because we've discovered, this is like a discovery of this space center that I built already. But first SSTO visit, we can commemorate that. So it's like more of a commemorative flag. Oh, there was some, I don't know if you missed them just then, but there was some hot dog horizontal fuel storage tanks over there, so that's where we can get the fuel reserves from. That's how we can justify the fact we could refuel this SSTO. So now again we can board, open up this little hatch just there. Once again, this is using the mod FreeIVA, even though all the parts here are stock. There are no modded parts on board this space plane. And then we can get on board our seat just here. There we are, buckled in, and yeah, everything's so we are now refueled. We've done our flag plant. That's like the only thing that's important, right, in space travel. So let's go ahead and throttle up our engines. And there we are starbound. I accidentally hit 1 on my keyboard, which for me is the action group that activates the Rapier engine, so didn't mean to erroneously activate them that second time. So in case you're wondering, why did Matt activate the Rapier engine just then? What was the reasoning? It's because I'm stupid. But as you can see, we are now comfortably above the surface of the Mun with our apoapsis rapidly raising. I generally kind of aim for an apoapsis height of around 30 kilometers, because just seems like a nice round number, and I've been playing this game for so long that I'm just sort of a bit set in my ways in many ways. Now, one of the fatal flaws, there's another fatal flaw, but not of this SSTO this time, of the design of the runway at my space center. In order to launch from the runway, we're actually going against the rotation of the Mun. We had to launch along the 270 degree vector on the nav ball, as opposed to the 90 degree vector. And the 90 degree vector is the more efficient, because we're launching with the rotation of the Mun. And if you launch with the rotation of the planet or moon that you're launching from, you're going to gain a little bit of extra delta V. Now luckily it's not really that big of a deal on the Mun, because of the fact that the Mun has quite low gravity. But if you're launching from Kerbin, for example, you can save about I think it's like 200 meters per second of delta V by launching along the 90 degree vector versus the 270 degree vector. I don't know where I got this number from, though. I feel like I just vaguely remember seeing a video about it like years and years and years ago, like a decade ago. So I could have pulled that number out of thin air. So if you know what the actual number is, please let me know in the comments below. And this is true in real life, right? Because obviously Kerbal Space Program uses real life physics, albeit somewhat simplified before anyone jumps in about, you know, Lagrangian points and all that and everything else. But there is one space, I think there's only one. There might be, maybe there's more than one, but there's one that's quite famous. There is a space agency on Earth that launches the quote-unquote incorrect way. They launch to the west rather than to the east. And, well, let's see who can comment it first. And you'll probably get thumbed up, and then I'll give you a heart if you get it correct. If you can give an explanation to the class as to why that space agency does it that way. I don't think I can say what it is and why in the video because I might get demonetized. So I'm leaving it to the comments to explain it. And hey, you know, drives up that engagement and all that. So I guess it's a net win for me. I don't get the video blocked and I get engagement in the comments. So there we are. Go me, I suppose. But yeah, it's an interesting one. So and I genuinely am looking for some enlightenment here, because when I finish doing these commentaries, I always immediately forget everything I said. So I'm not going to remember to Google this afterwards. Is there another space agency on Earth that launches, you know, to the west? Or maybe that I got this wrong, and the space agency that I'm thinking of that launches to the west actually doesn't, and it's an old wives' tale or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, irrelevant now, because we are returning to the... Not that it was ever really relevant to this video, was it? But I'm just saying, I can now talk about something that's happening in this video, and that is returning to the Kerbal Space Center. I noticed our little trajectory here was naturally more or less taking us over the Kerbal Space Center. What I usually do is I aerobrake or aero capture around Kerbin until our apoapsis is about, I don't know, between 70 and 150 kilometers, and then I coast to apoapsis, circularize, and then properly deorbit myself, so I'm getting on a nice encounter with the Kerbal Space Program. But when I have moments like this where everything just naturally lines up, I just do this, and I can pretend that I planned it this way the entire time. I guess I can't, because I just explained that it was a coincidence, but maybe if you're just watching this video and not listening to it, you'll be like, wow, how did Matt do that? Whoa, gosh golly. I'm going to leave a like down below and make sure I hit the subscribe button, and of course ring the bell so I get more of these videos recommended to me. Just saying. So yeah, I'm not great at landing at the Kerbal Space Center at night because you can't really see any of the landmarks below you because it's quite dark. You guys are familiar with the concept of nighttime, aren't you, right? So I was kind of looking. I know there are some like lights associated with the Kerbal Space Center, so I was sort of scanning for those. And of course, we do have a booster landed on one of the landing pads at my space center, and I never recovered it because I quite like having a thing that I can set as my target. So when I'm doing things like nighttime landings, or when there's very thick cloud cover and I can't really see the ground below me, I can set it as my target and have that little like kind of greenish yellow graticule showing up. I always think that it kind of looks more yellow than green, even though I think it's a sort of between the two. Some people claim it's definitely yellow, some people say it's green. So what do you see it as? Again, you can comment below if you think it's yellow or green. I'm going to call it lime, I think would be the best way I would describe that. Anyway, back on topic, we are now approaching the only working runway. This one is lit up brighter than the left-hand one because the left-hand one has trees growing out of it currently, so it's out of commission. It wasn't planned to have trees growing out of it, but, you know, that's how I'm sort of adding a little in-game canon explanation as to why this runway is one that's more brightly lit up. And here we are touching down. Oh, wait for it. Here we go. We've not got a lot of runway left, but we could deploy our drogue chute and strengthen up our braking power, and hopefully we should come to a nice safe stop, or just shy of the end of the runway. Let's go ahead and swing the camera around and see how close we got. Oof, fairly close, but it was all fine in the end. So I see that my list of Patreon and YouTube member supporters has appeared on screen, which means that must be the end of the video. It's not like I edited this video or anything, right? So thank you so much for watching, and if your name is on screen there, then massive thanks as well from the bottom of my heart. I always feel like I'm sounding insincere when I say this, but genuinely, thank you. And thank you everyone for watching and enjoying and watching this video.